What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another video. Today is the video that everybody's been asking me to make. This is prefabbing for Randomgen. So as you're aware, in Alpha 9 Randomgen a la Minecraft became available, and if you haven't played it yet, just to let you know, there is a big ass city in the middle and then random gens from outside of that. So what we're going to cover today is a number of things. We are going to cover Alpha 9 and Randomgen, but just Randomgen in general. Various things that you need to take care of, including air blocks, topsoil decorations, the new XML structure of Alpha 9, which affects prefabs, entity spawners, how to convert your old prefabs so that they work with Alpha 9. We're going to be looking at Hals editor again. HAL 9000's editor, seen some of the new features in that. We're going to be checking out the Randomgen folder. We're going to be working out what the difference is between plots, lots, zones, biomes, and all the rest of it, and best practices for testing your Randomgen prefabs. So, first things first, I'm not some sort of wizard. A lot of the stuff I've learned off the forums, and just everyone collaborating on the forums together. Just I know people like to watch videos. So I'm pretty much relaying a lot of information that has been a community effort on the forums. So on that note, shout out to Red Eagle 69. He is an absolute hero. John Bob, Echo, Dead Pirate Duo, Warsaken, and of course HAL 9000 for making the editor. And obviously so many other guys on the forum, too many to mention, but they're the core guys I want to shout out today. Right, let's get going. So, the first thing you want to be doing is you want to be downloading the latest version of HAL 9000's editor, and this version is 0.32, which is Xenophobia Zebra. So just make sure you've got the latest version of that. You can get that from the forums, and yep, do a bog standard installation, and then that will bring you up to speed here. So once you've done that, bring up your 7 Days to Die folder. And let's have a look at the prefabs folder. So we're going to data, we're going to prefabs, and what we're seeing here now is that a lot of stuff, a lot of prefabs in here, which are the TTS files. So if you right click on it, go to properties, these TTS files, these just used to be prefabs. This prefabs folder used to just be full of TTS files, and that was it. Whereas now, each TTS file has an XML file which goes with it. Now, just click on this XML file here and it's brought up the preview. We can see that this information is extra information about this prefab. So, we're just going to go through this first. Copy air blocks. Now, if you remember copy air blocks, this, in my advanced prefabbing video, copy air blocks, whether it was false or whether it was true, would define whether your prefab would be biome agnostic, i.e. it would kind of merge into whatever land was there, or it would define whether the air blocks were actually blocks, in which case you could make things like tunnels. So that is no longer kept inside the prefab, that's actually kept in this XML document. Allow topsoil decorations pretty much speaks for itself. We have things like zoning, which you have things like residential and city and town and stuff like that. Y offset is have a look what we got. So imagine your prefab is this, and some of it is below ground. By default, it will put the prefab on top of the earth. But this offset will allow you to correctly, dynamically have the prefab so that it spawns in where ground level is supposed to be. So that's what Y offset's for. Rotation to face north is just the same as rotation when you used to place prefabs in Navezgane. So if it's value 2, it'll be facing 180 degrees. Allowed townships speaks for itself. Allow biomes, again, speaks for itself. You use commas to separate multiple ones. And now, as you can see here, we have 3 lines for static spawner.class, static spawner.size, and static spawner.trigger. Now, static spawner is spawning a horde, spawning zombies. So, as you can see, this one will spawn a small horde. Now, this next one, static spawner.size, is the area of which, like this area of land of which the horde will spawn. And static spawn.trigger is kind of like, if you imagine the horde spawns here, this value of 160 is kind of like an invisible, I believe it was called on the forums, like an invisible tripwire, of which when you enter that tripwire, the zombies start spawning in. Okay, now this means that we should now have a boatload of prefabs, as we do, which have, note that the XML file name has to be exactly the same case included as the TTS file, which contains the actual prefab. Now then, let's have a look at the world file, well, the world folder. So go back up to data, into worlds, we've been in Nava's game before, and let's have a look in Randomgen. Now then, region should be empty, because our regions are generated dynamically. Let's have a look at entities. Entities has got nothing in it, because entities are generated dynamically as well. Entity spawners is pretty much the same. This is going to be quicker. Map info this is just what you see when you're about to start the game. Map thumbnail, you can change these if you really want, but next up we have prefabs, spawn points, and world. World number 5 is random, so just leave that. Next up we have spawn points and prefabs. So in Randomgen, the only 2 things that you really want to dick about with is spawn points, if you really want to dick about with spawn points. I mean, you can see here straight away what they do. Here are the coordinates, and yeah, I mean, you can add more spawn points if you want. I suppose if you wanted everyone to spawn at the same spot, you could do that. But yeah, that's what spawn points are for. So this brings us to the meat. Now, this was suggested to me in an earlier video that I use Notepad++, which I do anyway, but it's a little bit easier on the eyes for color coordination. So here we have the Prefabs.xml file. As you can see, we have city blocks Wasteland, then city lots, then town rural. Let me scroll down a bit. We have town rural wilderness, rural wilderness. Ignore the spelling mistakes. This is a mistake in Alpha 9. You see how they spelled business wrong there? If you spell business right, then these prefabs will start appearing in the world. But they'll get that fixed in 9.2. So you can either fix this manually yourself to get the prefabs working now, these ones, or you can just leave it and then it'll fix itself in the next version. So, in the city, there are all of these prefabs. Now, all of these prefabs will be randomly placed in the city when the city is generated. So, they will not be necessarily placed in this order, and there is no guarantee that this prefab, just because it's in this list, will appear. Each prefab is every time a prefab is generated for creating the city, one of these is picked at random. So, as an example, if you deleted all of these and saved, and then quickly fired up a new game, when I'm not breaking the game, that is. Right, that took enough attempts. We'll call it YouTube. So, as you can see, we deleted everything in the city lots. So when we log in, we should now only have police stations and police garages. Now, here's some top tips for you. You've just got in Alpha 9. You press M. You go, holy shit, I don't know where I am. So, first thing to do, open your console, type DM, puts debug mode on. Second thing is press F1. It brings up this little control panel on the right. Type 0 in and 0, and that will put you at the center of the map. The center of the map is where the city's at. Click set position, and you will spawn there. So, if you're in the sky, you might have to press G to come down. So now I've just pressed G, and now when we've come down, we can see, if we press M, that all of these buildings are remarkably similar. Yeah. On the map, you can hold down Control and right-click to teleport around. And whoever it was, one second, I just want to find out who that was. Whoever it was that pointed that out to me in my last video, thank you very much indeed, because you saved me a hell of a lot of time. It was DJMPSF. Thank you very much for that. So, yeah, as you can see, all the prefabs in the city lot are the same. And you can, like I say, you can hold down Control and right-click to teleport around. I'm guessing, just by pressing tilde. You see here where I can't load these prefabs because business is spelled wrong. But yeah, you can see all these prefabs are the same, which is a bit poop. So, we'll quit out of here. I'm not entirely sure why Park and Garage 01 didn't spawn. Seems to be whatever's on the last line can be a bit fussy sometimes. So now if we save, create a new game, and go back in with all of our prefabs, we should now have a rather interesting looking city. If we don't spawn in water. Oh shit. Right, so debug mode on. Spawn at the city. And there we go. We now have a city which has got, just gonna let it load in, which has got more than one prefab. Okay. Now then, what you have to understand is, each one of these squares, because the city, one sec, I'm just going to explore a little bit more of the city so you can see. So you're going to see a pattern here straight away. Each one of these areas is broken down into what's called Wasteland hubs. Now, this here, this square, is a Wasteland hub. This square is a Wasteland hub. This is 2 Wasteland hubs beside each other. Here's 4 Wasteland hubs. And pretty much, if you're designing a prefab which is going to be like a square like this, and it's going to be inside the city, you are going to be restricted to the size of 44 by 44. You can't go over this by 1, I believe it is. But on a serious note, if you're going to make a city lot that is this big to fill up one city Wasteland hub, then it's 44 by 44. Next up is the roadside hubs, which are 94 by 127. So if you're going to make a Wasteland hub, that is how a roadside hub, sorry, that is how big that should be. Couple of other things that I feel like I should point out. Oh god. Is that gonna come out here? Is that don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to making prefabs. I mean, there's a lot of new XML to learn. It seems to be quite picky at the minute about what it likes and what it doesn't like. So if you were going to make a new prefab, then this is the way that I recommend that you do it. So let us move this out of the way for a second. And let's bring back in Hals editor. Open up the prefab editor, and while we've got our XML document up, let's have a look at something that already exists. So as you can see, there is one here called Parking Garage 1. So let's go File, Open in Memory, Parking Garage 1, open. Here it is in all its glory. So this is like a multi-story car park. And it's 17 big. So say we wanted to use this as the basis of making our prefab. Easiest way just to clear this is just click on air, hold your middle mouse button down and drag across. That sets everything to air. Find out how many layers it's got. So it's got 17 layers. So go prefab, remove layers from 1 to 17, bang. And now we can go File, Save As. We can just call this template actually. And then if we ever want to do this again, if say we wanted just to keep this as our template, we can save it as template. So then it just means we've got a blank document ready for going. So what you could do from here is if you'd already made a prefab, you could import your prefab into here. So if say you've made an old prefab and you're like, oh, I want to use a little bit of that building and I want to bring it into this, you could just import prefabs if you like. But that is all part of my advanced prefabbing tutorial, which is on the other video. So if you don't know how to do that, stop here and go and watch how you do that on the other video. So all we're going to do here is we are just going to make a stone pillar, and I'm going to make a brick one. So we're going to go File, Add Layer, add this at Layer 1, bollocks. Add multiple layers, so we'll insert it at Layer 2. We're going to insert 10 layers. So now we've got 11 layers. We still have some entities on here, so we might want to take those entities out. Go on here, we can right click. Oh, there's another car. Get rid of you. Oh, and there's some other cars. We'll get rid of you as well. So let's just quickly make a couple of things just to test this out. So we're going to set this to copy and we're going to set it at 10. Actually, no, we're not. No, we're not. Let's not do that. Go back to blocks. And we're just going to make some towers out of blocks. What have we got? We've got dirt. So we're going to make a little dirt cube. And we're going to make a brick tan one. So this is our prefab, okay? Now for ease, we are going to copy these layers up and just make some towers. So where the hell is it again? Copy layer. So we're going to copy layer from 0 to from 1 to 10. Okay, copy complete. So now if we scroll up, we will see we have 4 towers. So we are going to go File and Save. Now, one nice thing about Hals Prefab Editor is that if you click Prefab and show Random World XML, you now have a very nice little control panel that writes the XML for you. So let's come back over here. Just made a file called template. This is what we've got open here. And now we've got an XML file. So if we tick things down here, like burnt forest, desert forest, pine forest, and we save, and then we come back over here, we can see that Hals editor has dynamically added and written this nice little piece of XML for us. So it's very easy using these tools. You can even put an entity spawner in if you want. So we want to spawn some crawlers and some dogs. We want a trigger to be 55. Want the size to be 30. This is how many blocks up and down it is. And then say by 30 again. Just go file, save. And then when we come back over here, we can see that it's nicely written the XML for us again. So, as we want this to be in the city, I'm not going to be a wise guy. What I am going to do is I'm just going to close this down. And I'm just going to find the one that we used before. So what was it called again? It was called Garage. Parking garage. And I'm just going to copy that XML. I'm going to go back into template. I'm just going to paste it in. So it's got the same XML as template. Actually, it's not parking garage. Let's use the one on the police station, because police station is one that was there before. Police station before. As you can see, in this one, it has allow biomes Wasteland hub, which is the city. So there we go. File save. So, in order for this to have a chance of spawning in our world, in our randomly generated city, we need to go into world, Randomgen, Prefabs, and we need to assign a new value. So we can go in here. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's get rid of everything. Copy police station. And let's call it template. Oh, test plate? Template. So now, when we fire this up, the only buildings that should be made, that should be in our city, are police stations and our crappy new prefab. Don't forget, each time you should be making a new game here, especially on Randomgen. Because if you load up an existing game, then it's already been generated. So, went to the game, DM, F1, set position 0, 0, press G so you don't fly. Then I fly to the ground, and here is it. Why aren't you here, you son of a bitch? Have a look in the console. Who's skipping it? Well, it's definitely not here. This is rather annoying. So we can see that we're back at having a city full of police stations. Let's just quit this for a second. A city full of police stations, even. Let's go back up to data, prefabs, template. Now, in all honesty, I'm not exactly sure why that's not working. You can see there, police station. I don't know whether it's something to do with the bottom of this part of this XML. Just going to try putting that in there. I'm sure there's something fishy going on with this part. There we go. Ah, yeah, that wasn't great. One thing to note as well is your prefabs should have one block as like the base. Obviously, like this is the road, and as you can see, kind of like now there's no footpath or anything like that around the prefab. So yeah, there is definitely something fishy about the first prefab. Sorry, the last prefab in the list seems to be ignored because now we have a city full of. Now we have a city full of this, and there's no police stations. So I wonder if there's some sort of hidden character here. See if that makes a difference. But either way, though, at least you can see now how you get your prefabs into Randomgen. You just have to be very, very careful when you're copying and pasting and stuff like that. Let's try it one last time. No, it just seems to ignore. It just seems to ignore the very last prefab for some reason. Like I said, there are still numerous bugs with Alpha 9.1, which is the current release. Of course, as I've already mentioned, there are numerous spelling mistakes and things like that in this, such as business and stuff like that, which is causing the prefabs not to spawn. Some tips for you would be to design your prefab in Navezgane to the right size. So like go into Navezgane and just make like a square of 44 by 44, whatever it is, and then build inside of that. Or you could just use the editor. You could just open up the editor, prefab editor, count how many rows you've got. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Prefab. Add multiple columns on the left. 34. Prefab. Add rows. At the bottom, 34. And then just like that, you've got a template ready to go. So that is how you generate. That's how you make prefabs for the city. Now, how about Randomgen prefabs? Well, let's take a look. The first thing that you should know, get on the map, we can zoom out, and then we can use Control and right click to teleport around. So let's just teleport down here somewhere. Christ, this is all this miserable biome. There we go. So I'm just going to let this load up a minute, and we're going to talk about towns and rural and the wilderness and stuff like that. So as you can see, we have a road, and prefabs will spawn on the road, well, beside the road, eventually. Little bridges and stuff like that. Now, perfect example is here. We've just come across 2 prefabs in the road. And what's quite nice is they have little driveways which link up to the road too. Now, we're just going to go back to the world folder. So Steam apps, common, 7 days to die, data, world, Randomgen, and prefabs. So basically there are set kind of like profiles of areas, really, I suppose. So just as an example, in rural areas, which kind of like the middle of nowhere, you might spawn something like a junkyard or a snowy ski lodge or a sawmill. Now, if you look at Snowy Ski Lodge, let's go and have a look at Snowy Ski Lodge, the actual prefab. Data. So let's go and have a look. Snowy Ski Lodge, where is it? Snowy Ski Lodge. So we can see that the only biome that the Snowy Ski Lodge will spawn in is snow. You see what I mean? And it'll only spawn in a rural environment as well. Rotation to face north too, so we'll face south for some reason in a commercial zone. Copy air blocks is true, and it will have a zombie spawner attached to it. So in the world's prefabs folder, you don't care about what biomes you put in here. This doesn't give two monkeys about the biomes. The biomes are connected to the prefabs. Okay? So we've got junkyards, Snowy Ski Lodge, and sawmill. They will appear kind of like in the middle of nowhere. Actually, not really in the middle of nowhere, but rural environments. Wilderness will appear in the middle of nowhere. So wilderness is completely zone agnostic. So you're going to get things like campsites and army camps and stuff that doesn't need a road attached to it. You see. Town, rural, and wilderness. These are prefabs that can appear in any of these categories. And when you look up here and you see what you've got things like town, rural, which is the definition of town is how many prefabs in the area. So something like rural might only have one prefab. You know what I mean? So you might get a Snowy Ski Lodge and it'll be on its own. Town, rural, or wilderness means these can appear either in a rural area, kind of like on their own, like a graveyard on its own, or it could be as part of a town which might have 3 or 5 or more prefabs to it. See? This is a lot. I understand this is a lot to take in, but you just have to bear with me. And then city lots is reserved for the central city. And then city blocks wasteland is, from what I understand, the city is always surrounded by a wasteland. So let's just go and check it out. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments and I will stand corrected. So we just go to the outside of the city. And you see here there is kind of like a wasteland, bio-waste area outside the city which can have its own little prefabs like this. Just kind of spawn here and there to give the old apocalyptic feeling. So we've covered a lot. Let me just see what we've got on the list. So we've covered Alpha 9, we've covered Randomgen, we've covered the XML values, we've covered entity spawners in random prefabs. Like I was saying earlier, you can import prefabs into here, and then just as long as you give them an XML file and you put them in the right category and in the world's prefabs file, they should show up. Now, best practices for testing. This is one thing I will bring up in Alpha 9. Now, Alpha 9 is... one more thing, by the way. When you're in debug mode, if you press F6, you can spawn things, which is quite cool. I never knew that. So you can click and spawn a zombie, you can spawn a zombie cop. You can even spawn a car on them if you want. But yeah, anyway, best practices when it comes to making prefabs. If you are making a prefab for something like this, like a city lot, obviously, because this is only a percentage let's just go back to this one. So naturally, rather than having all the different things that can appear in the city, I would make a copy of your Prefabs.xml file, which I haven't done. And then it just means that you can remove everything except for the one that you're testing on. So in this case, you can remove everything except for template. And then at least that way, when you get in the city, you're not having to spend like 10, 15 minutes hunting around for your prefab. You can just go, okay, there it is there, and you can have a look. If you're making prefabs for townships and stuff like that, then make them and test them in Navezgane, because otherwise you could spend, like just as an example, say we were making, I don't know, a new graveyard or something like that, we could spend hours flying around the map looking for it, you know what I mean? Make it in Navezgane, and then when you're finished with it and you're happy with it, then put it in a random world. I mean, you can do the exact same thing. So as an example, if you were making a gas station, you could just go and delete everything so that the only prefab that can spawn in a rural town area is a gas station. But it's a little bit, it's a pain in the backside. That's kind of like, this is like your final testing. But for everyday checking of how your prefab's coming along, just make it in Navezgane. It's the simplest way. And then when you're done, put it into the Randomgen. One other thing as well, if wilderness prefabs, which are the ones that can be in the middle of nowhere, you can make them really big. So it's like I've seen some prefabs of like the Walking Dead prison and stuff like that. They're really big prefabs. The maximum size for wilderness prefab seems to be 171 by 171. So that's a really big cube. So I mean, going back to here, let's just get that some scale. Add multiple rows at the bottom. So we already have 45. Let's add 132 rows. And 132 columns. So while that's busy drawing, you don't need me to tell you that this is going to be huge. Let's just draw some stone in. I would draw some stone in if it wasn't being a pain in the ass. Bricks. Why aren't you drawing in? By the way, we're going to zoom out. Yeah. So prefabs can be very large indeed. That's all you need to know. Well, I'm just trying to think of anything else to add to this video before I close it down. But yeah, that's just about it, really. Ensure that data prefabs. Ensure that bollocks, Windows Media Player's just dying. Ensure that your template, or sorry, not your template, whatever prefab that you've made has copy air blocks and allow topsoil decorations. Make sure there's something in there for that, otherwise it won't work properly. And as I mentioned before, the easiest way to do that is just copy an existing Prefabs.xml and then use that, and then use Hals editor to customize it the way that you would like. And I think that's just about it for now. Yeah, well, I've got more videos coming. I'm going to be doing some more videos on modding, how to make your own recipes, how to make your own items, and tons more. So if you like this video, please press like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Bigsy90210 from teamseo.com and the No Blueprints blog. See you guys next time.